Hello,
Hello.
everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to Literarily Wasted. It is our book discussion for November on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. As you can see, we have a special guest with us today. Welcome, Bethany.
Hi. Thanks for having me on, y'all.
Thanks for coming.
Our Frankenstein expert. It's out there now. Now everybody knows. Sorry, we had to start a little bit late. There's something weird happened on Facebook where it just wasn't going, so I had to redo it, and now it's up. But so we see people here. Yay! So
I was worried it was me because I'm on my phone and my tech's all jacked up today. So I was like, oh no, is it me? Am I just staring there looking and they're all laughing at me? Maybe.
Well, who's here? Lucas, are you able to do the thing?
Wait, let me. No, I can. Okay.
Then he's trying.
It's gonna be clunky because I'm on my phone, y'all. So here we go. Hi. Wait, let me load up a new comment.
Oh.
Hi. Leanne and Cindy and Katie and Brandy and Natalie too. Hi. Willa and Kelly and Jody and Carrie and Kent and Natalie too again. Hi. Liz, some Leet Speak person on YouTube, and Adrian, Carrie, and Missy and Leet Speak again. Hi, Jody and Willa and Brandy and Giggles and Adrian, Leet Speak and Tim and Leanne and Giggles and Natalie and Kristen and Tim.
So lead speak is Curtis. Hello, Curtis.
Hi, Curtis. I couldn't get through that one, so welcome.
Welcome. We're happy to have you. And any other new faces and names that we see here? Let's see. So cool. That's everybody so far. Christy is here. Benny's on the floor.
Yeah, we had to move him.
Everything is.
Talia is in rehearsal, so she sends her regards. And Stacy.
Hey.
I'm literally on my iPhone scrolling. So and Jeff. So yeah, I apologize if I missed anyone. And Talia sends her regards. She's knee deep in learning lines and getting her show on stage. So she's out this discussion, and she should be back next one because it'll be the week in between her show. So anyway, she says hello, and luckily we've got Bethany to come join our ranks and round us out tonight. So thanks, Bethany.
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's awesome.
So I guess we should dive right in. I guess first question, since Frankenstein's been out for a little while, it's not exactly a new release. Is just a poll. Is this your first time reading Frankenstein? I don't know Bethany's answer. You've read it 3 times.
Three times.
Nice.
And Lucas, is this your first time?
This is my 1.5 time. This is my first full time, but I'd started it. I think I had to do in high school, and then I didn't.
Yeah.
That's every book in high school for me.
Yeah.
This is my first time.
My first time too. So okay. So it's interesting.
Oh, also, if you know what version you read, what version did you read?
Oh yeah, true. Bethany, have you read both versions, or all 3 versions, or however many versions there are?
No, I've only read the 1818. I have comments on that, but I'll save them.
I also read the 1818 version.
I think mine was it 31?
Yeah. I listened to the 1831 version.
Yeah. And then I did do some research on, I was like, what is the difference? And the original one's it's got some weird, little cringy nuances to it, right?
Yeah, it was a different time.
Marry your sister. It's all good.
Wasn't
sister, not quite sister.
But cousin.
Close enough.
Sister.
Yeah.
Still close enough. Too close to home.
So I'm interested. I mean, I guess we can talk about what, as first-time readers, what we thought about it. But I'm also interested to hear from Bethany about why you keep going back to this.
To be honest, it's always been for school, but that doesn't mean I don't love it. There's just so much. It's a literary gold mine. There's
Mm.
nothing else like it. There have been imitations, but there's nothing else like it in the world.
It's just fascinating. It's just we'll dive more into that literary gold mine because I'm interested. I do want to hear kind of your academic take on it because this is such a highly studied and imitated and spin-offy whatever. For me as a first-time reader, I will say that I did enjoy this book. I actually enjoyed reading it from like a historian perspective, just kind of like this is where it all came from. This is where Frankenstein came from. I will say that I was quite shocked that it was nothing like the movie.
Or any of the iterations.
There was no lightning bolt. There was no laboratory scene. It was just like, oh, by the way, I made a monster. So, like I think that was really fun for me to kind of see where it all came from and like all the stuff that you really just don't associate with Frankenstein. The whole framing story, the character on the boat who found him, and then the sort of levels within the levels. It's like just stuff that like, oh, this is part of Frankenstein. I'm just looking at it from like a historian, like this is sort of the origin thing. It was really fun. It was hard to read a little bit. Like I think it was a little bit of a different language.
Yeah.
It really required me to like concentrate the whole time as I read it.
That's actually why I listened to the audiobook, is because I wanted someone to read it to me. And I knew that if I was reading the ebook or the physical book, I was going to get bogged down.
I get that.
Frankenstein's absolutely insufferable.
You are not wrong. One of the really fun things for me for this book is I read it before Adam did, and just hearing his reactions to it, especially when at 29% in the ebook, chapter 5, the monster wakes up. It's like the first sentence. It's the first two sentences of chapter 5 in the ebook I was looking at. But he was like waiting. Yeah, I'm going to have to do something there.
It's Benny's turn. He's telling perspective.
Well, Adam was like going through it, and he was excited about it and like doing it from a historian's perspective. And then all of a sudden the monster's awake, and he's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
He was caught so off guard. And like I was too, but it was way more fun to watch him.
I wasn't ready for it. I think that like because I wasn't ready for it, I wasn't able to appreciate the chapter before where he's like realizing that he gains this knowledge and that he decides he's going to reanimate. Like I thought he was like starting small and he was like going to start with a cat or something. Like I was not ready for this to be full monster.
Well, and then like when you do get to that point and you still have like 70% of the book left, like what is there? Especially like when all you know is what you think Frankenstein the story is, and it's
a lot.
That's such a small part of this book.
Lucas, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm exactly kind of where you are, Adam. It was interesting, and I was almost like, you know what? All of us were media and the zeitgeist of whatever Frankenstein was. We've all known Frankenstein our whole lives, and it's been wrong, right? And so I think that was the biggest eye-opening thing for me was, we don't get the classic tropes of Frankenstein, right? Of like flipping the switch and it's alive, and like Igor and pitchforks and fire and a castle, and it's really this kind of odd story about this man and this creature that he creates, and them both reconciling their places in the world. And so I think that was the biggest thing that I was kind of like, we all kind of got not gypped, but it's like I wonder what it would be like to not know anything about Frankenstein, right? You'd be like, what's that? Be like, it's a great book, you should read it. Reading that and then absorbing everything else that came with it, because we really flipped the cart. And so I think that's just a really interesting way to absorb the original content, right? But it's like I feel like it got spoiled for me. in a lot of ways, and there's no way to avoid that. But I think it speaks testament to what Mary Shelley created, because I mean, she created, like vampires have been in folklore for. There's no original vampire story. It's been in folklore for millennium, and then but Frankenstein's like a new guy to the clan, but then you get like the Monster Bash group, and then but it got all spoiled in some ways. So I feel like it was just interesting to see the origin, and how it really came about, and who the characters really were, and the settings, because it's nothing like what we all grew up with, right? Of the villagers storming the castle gate and
fire bad, like that kind of thing.
Fire bad.
But like I said the same thing to Christy when I was reading it. I was like, there is no way for me to read this for the first time.
Yeah.
Like I'm reading this for the first time, but there's no way for me to read this Frankenstein, just anything about Frankenstein. Like, what is this? I don't know. Like it's hard to go into this without any sort of preconceived notions and like expectations, because it's just so ingrained in our culture.
Yeah, you carry bias with it, like go immediately, right? Like I have a Monster Bash like pinball machine that's got Frankenstein all over it, and it's the same thing. It's alive, and he comes up and he's like, "Arr." So it was interesting to see where it came from. But again, I feel like I don't know. I was left with this like, dang, I really wish I could have experienced this first before seeing all of the rest of the things that I've seen my entire life. And I wonder, like, how did they get, like, what started then the new wave of, the traditional, I guess it was like your traditional universal monsters, and maybe that was it. Like
Boris Karloff, Frankenstein.
Taking it there, right?
Yeah, it was just Boris
redefine
Karloff.
It.
Basically, he's like, we're like, we need to make this more interesting. Let's do lightning and it's alive. But yeah, it's just so fascinating. It's so fascinating. Okay, let's address this really quickly. There are people talking about how whiny Victor Frankenstein is in the comments and comparing him to Louis from Interview with the Vampire. Definitely made that comparison. Victor Frankenstein sucks.
He's the worst.
I just kept saying that to Christy. I was like, Victor sucks. He's such a POS.
Yeah.
We can get into that. So Bethany, when you keep reading this and you find this as like a literary goldmine, like do you when you do it for school, like do you compare it to the Frankenstein popular culture version, or like how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I read it for college, that was one of our discussions. Like, what do you know of Frankenstein from pop culture, and how is this different from that? And our professor showed us, which I'm not a super monster movie person, so all I knew was Young Frankenstein, literally. But he showed us this old, like, if not the first, one of the first film adaptations produced by Thomas Edison, of all people. And that is kind of the early stages of how the visual Frankenstein came about. And it's funny to watch as a modern viewer, as the monster is kind of like growing, and you get cut scenes to it, and it's a little bigger. But at one point early on, it's just a skeleton, and it's going like this. And it's just hilarious. But yeah, I mean, that's just part of it. You can't escape it. It's like Lucas said, it's all around us. You can't get away.
It's yeah. They took some liberties for sure.
Yeah. Well, and going back to Victor being whiny, do Mike's comment up there. I forgot about that, but
Frank, this anguish is so much worse than Justine's, who was sentenced to death. Oh my God, the Justine thing.
Don't let me stop this.
He was so frustrating. He's like, she didn't do it, but I'll be witness to her dying.
Yeah, this is say bookmark that one for later too. But like the Justine thing, first of all, he's so whiny. He's so like, woe is me. Oh my gosh, she's so innocent. And
and
I am the murderer.
He's such a victim while everybody around him is being murdered because of his actions
he's like,
inactions.
I'm the murderer of William, and I'm the murderer, a future murderer of Justine. Oh, woe is me. What do I do? And then she dies. And he's like, oh, I experienced so much misery. And then Dad's
Let
like,
me get sick for months.
He's like,
every time it's like, I'm just going to curl up and be sick for 2 months because I suck.
And the first time he got sick was like, what, days after the creature opens his eyes? And that whole scene was so bizarre to me. I was not expecting him to be like, oh, gosh, it worked. I'm out.
Yeah.
Well, and I do have some problems with, I know, it came from kind of like oral, her doing oral stories and whatnot. But like, I have that real, once he gets sick after the monster wakes up and his brother is killed, and there's just this weird, like, wait, we find out that, and then like later on, so there's a big like plot hole, I think, that I don't know. I mean, Bethany, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like I saw some problems with that, and I had some problems. We can talk about problems, but I had some problems with just like, oh, and now magically because he creeped on these people, he's totally literate and can speak eloquently, and wow, that's convenient.
Well, but they were teaching the new wife English, and so he was like getting it through that. And also, he had a past. I'm assuming his body parts did know English or whatever language at that point.
Well, shoot. But Victor, to me, was like the ultimate like entitled, overprivileged rich kid. Like the fact that he's like, woe is me, Justine, I there's nothing I can do, even though there's absolutely something you can do. And then Daddy's like, hey, you want to take a vacation? And he's like, yeah. And then he's like, I went on the vacation and I felt better. That's what I needed, was to go on a trip. It was just a vacation. It's like, you're the rich entitled college kid that commits a crime and like gets a slap on the like.
Yeah. And then he gets sick again on his vacation, and Daddy has to come and get him again and bring him back home. And it's like,
oh, anytime something doesn't go my way, I have to go ill.
Like, maybe you should get married. Let's get married. Get you married right away, and then you'll be happy. Fine, Daddy. Fine.
Yeah. But the first time.
But he didn't know if he could speak or not, because he just like noped out of there.
True. Yeah. I mean, we know that the monster, the creature, couldn't speak because he said so.
Yeah.
When he spoke. But let's talk about that moment. So first of all, we have the creation of the monster, which is just like, and I went back and I read the chapter, and he's like narrating to this Walton fellow on the boat. He's like, listen, I'm going to leave out the details because I don't want you to get any crazy ideas and do this yourself. You're welcome. And then he's just like, oh, and then I made the monster. And then the monster wakes up and he's like, bye.
Also, the monster that he like hand stitched together, basically, he chose everything about the monster. And then he was shocked when he's like scary.
But he even said that he chose them for beauty. Like he chose like beautiful characteristics. And then he like put it all together and he was like, ooh, I did not.
Yeah.
I did not. and then he pieced out. He was like, I got to get out of the house. And then he run into his friend, and his friend's like, hey, buddy, you want to go back to your house? And he's like, yeah, let me just check to see if the monster. Oh, he's not. Okay, good. 2 years later or whatever. Like there was such a long time for him to just like be like, yeah, well.
It was like a couple of months, I think.
It's just like, whew, well, that was a thing. Gosh, I'm not going to even try to follow up on this because out of sight, out of mind until the death of William, right?
Yeah. Well, and for the monster, he did save the girl from drowning, right? This is in Frankenstein or in the monster story.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got shot. And then he got shot, for helping her. One of the things I really appreciated about this book is that it takes a monster basically that does some very horrible things to people and makes me feel really, really sad for him. And I thought that the book did that really well.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because I mean that's the whole philosophical question that everybody knows is like, what's a monster and what's a man, and how do you get there? And I think it's just so expertly done by an 18-year-old girl. Hello, I mean, come on.
Oh, was she 18 when she wrote this?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and like Bethany, do you know the story behind that? Like their little bet or whatever? Do you mind?
Yeah, so like all these group of romantic writer friends, it was Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, Mary Shelley, John Polidori. I feel like there's a fifth, but I can't remember. And so they're all just kind of chilling together in Switzerland, and it's a gloomy day and they can't get out. And so they want to tell each other ghost stories. And best ghost story wins. Like, I don't know what the prize was, but and so she starts working on this story because she had been kind of reading up on galvanization, which was kind of just becoming a thing. And that's where the electricity kind of comes in. And so she just wrote what she thought was scary. And I think she won. I don't know if they determined who won, but I think she did.
If I remember from the introduction that I think Percy wrote in the 1818 version, hers was the only story that got
completed.
Well, one of them ended up like bookending, or not bookending, but ending a poem of someone's. But hers was the only one that like got published on its own.
And then I read in the introduction to the 1831 version that she had a hard time coming up with an idea. Like she was like, I don't know what to do. And then she like had some sort of fever dream.
Yeah.
And she was like, she saw like, I don't know, somebody being reanimated or something like that in her dream. And she was like, okay.
Yeah.
This is a thing. Is this a thing? I think this is a thing.
And I don't know if you've read The Vampire by John Polidori. Mm-hmm. It was a fragment that Byron started on that trip. He left it off. John Polidori picked it up. And so if you've ever read that, that's strictly it's Polidori, but Byron started it. And it's a good one too.
Nice.
Vampire?
The Vampire.
The Vampire. So yeah, it's an interesting way that this story was created. I don't, and then just to look at it as like a story within a story within a story, because like you have this fellow writing letters to his sister,
the captain,
the boat captain, who's on a journey to discover things up in the Arctic, and then Victor comes aboard and starts telling his story, and then within Victor's story you have the monster story. So it's all like, but this is all coming from Walton, right? Like Walton is the one
hearing it,
who has whatever the photographic memory of hearing stories.
Well, no, because he was taking notes while Frankenstein was telling the story, and then Frankenstein wanted to see the notes, and he like made notes on his notes to make sure everything was correct. So
it was edited. It was
they explained why there are so many words.
But like this is all, like we never actually heard from the creature directly. It's all sort of
true.
Well,
we didn't hear from Frankenstein directly.
It's true, even though he did edit the story.
Well, okay, you got me.
Yeah, poor Walton is like, I just want a friend. Can I have a friend, please? And then
I'm here on this boat, man.
It's like the woman at the beginning of The Living Daylights. She's like, she's on a boat alone. She's like, I just would love a man to drop in on me. And James Bond falls to the roof, and he's like, hello. Same thing. But yeah, so the story within a story within a story, which is something I just never think of when I think of Frankenstein. Like this Walton character.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Well, and I think it's really interesting that we don't get the monsters story until way later in the story. Because like Adam was even talking about, he's like, what's the monster been doing? Like, I'd love to like hear from him what's been going on.
Where's the little girl throwing flowers in the well? Where's the blind monk?
And we just hadn't gotten there yet. Well, I mean, and those things don't exist in the book. But.
Yeah, we got the blind guy, but it was a different context. It was a different thing.
Also, the monster got them chopped wood for like what, a year or something. I really feel like he could have pulled off befriending them a little.
Yeah, that's what Mike
better.
said. I think above here, he was like, I really think that he kind of botched that situation.
Like, because I was thinking, like, man, if he just like lets them catch him bringing them wood.
Yeah.
Or just like you said, befriend the father a little longer, and then the father could be like, hey, this is my friend.
I did hate that. I hated that for him because he really did want the connection, and I think he had grown fond of them and felt like part of them, and I think his tactics were solid. He was like, okay, let me befriend the blind guy, and then it'll be cool, and he'll vouch for me, and it didn't work out.
And then big whoops. He's like, it's you, please. I'll be my friend.
Yeah.
Well, Natalie makes a great point. He knew that he messed that up. And I totally get it. Like, he doesn't have any experience, like any good experience with humans at all.
Yeah, I mean, he could have done a whole Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, if the Phantom can do it.
Yeah, and he's, the angel of music.
He does have that voice.
So, so somebody else mentioned how, if we're talking about how much of a terrible person Victor is, and this frustrated me because I saw it coming from 10 miles away. When the monster says to him, after he refuses to create the female monster, he's like, I will be with you on your wedding night. And he's like, oh no, he's coming to kill me. And I'm like, please, Vic, listen.
His ego, he's so self-centered.
Everybody else saw that coming, right?
Yeah. Oh, and there was another comment that mentioned his ego, like in that particular instance. The fact that he couldn't even like conceive that he'd be coming after not him.
Yeah, after he tears her up in front of him, Creature's like looking through the window like, yes. And he's like, no. And I don't know what that looks like. I'm just doing paper. Tearing paper.
That's probably what it looks like, Adam.
He's like, no, I will not. And then he throws it up in the air.
And like, did you notice, like, even in the beginning, when he's not even in college yet, he's reading all these old books, and his professors tell him, oh, this is outdated. You need to let this go and move on to what's been proven. And he can't let it go because he says that at least they believed in something grand and great. And that's why he can't let it go.
Yeah. So
even from the beginning, he'd rather read something he knows is wrong just out of hubris.
True. And he also, like, when he went to seek his professors out, he found the one professor who was like, this is garbage, leave it. He was like, I didn't like to hear that. So I went and found another guy who told me a little bit more about what I wanted to hear. And he was my mentor. Basically, he was like, that one professor was mean to me and told me the stuff I was reading is bad. So I went and found another guy who was nicer to me. And now we're friends.
Yep.
He was so eager to. Oh, I just noticed that's the Star Trek cast picture behind you, and I like that, Bethany.
Oh yeah.
And I think I was kind of shocked at how young he was. I again preconceived notions of who this character is. It was like, this is like a college kid that's not even married yet. So I think that kind of took me aback. And he's just like in an apartment building a monster man.
Building a monster man. Yeah, in his apartment, not even like a major laboratory castle with a big table that rises up into the sky.
It's just in his apartment, man. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, and then his whole fears of like, if I create this monster for him, is this person going to be even worse? Are they going to let him adhere to his promise?
Well, no, and that they'll like have monster babies, and then there will be monsters all over the place.
Yeah, let me see.
Someone made that point in class. Like, if you are literally building a woman,
just leave out the
reproduction yourself.
Like from parts. That's an excellent point.
And also, you're building humans so well that all of their functions work. That's pretty
Mhm.
impressive. Didn't he say that he had to, like, because the intricacies of human anatomy were so fine, that's why he made the creature bigger than like normal? Like he just like had to enlarge to show texture or something?
I don't remember.
I don't remember that, but it makes sense.
It does.
I
I mean,
liked
he
how.
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I liked how he didn't have to eat a lot. Like he could just like
Oh, the creature?
have some berries, and then
Yeah.
he was good.
And he could survive in the Arctic and
Yeah,
all
like
that
he
stuff.
kind of had superpowers, which was neat.
with great power.
And gosh, if the humans had been nicer, he could have used his powers for good.
Could have been something. Could have been a contender. Leanne keeps thinking about decomposition.
Mm. Maybe that's why he wanted to go to the Arctic, because he wouldn't preserve a little bit better.
Maybe.
Let's see. Mary Shelley had no science. It wasn't about the science. Yeah, I mean, there was no science in this. It was just hinted at that he sort of discovered this secret of reanimation. That he was like, surely. Like, I find myself thinking, like, why is this, if this is so obvious to me, why didn't anybody else think of this? What an idiot. I hate Victor.
I know Victor's annoying, but like also when he refused to make the wife, whatever. I guess I can understand that he doesn't want to create another monster, but like all he had to do was give the current monster companionship, and it could have come from him.
Yeah, he just needed to be a guide, a mentor.
He needed to be accepted by anybody.
Yeah.
It was just super frustrating.
And
But
that was
instead he was like, ugly. He's ugly.
Yeah.
I can see his veins through his skin, and his eyes are yellow. Oh, I shall take ill. Oh, dear Henry Clerval. He killed Henry.
Yeah.
He killed Henry. Forgot about Henry. Henry and all the deaths were just William, Henry,
Elizabeth,
and Justine.
Justine, kind of.
yeah.
Well, and then his
And his
dad
dad.
died from like being sad, which I get
Sad
if
dad.
like everybody around you is dying.
Yeah.
He did the Padme death.
Mm.
Bethany, were you going to say something a second ago?
I don't remember what it was, but when Adam did the woe is me, like it just reminded me of another point. And again, I don't want to get too schoolish, but
No, go for it. Get schooly.
one of the papers that I wrote recently was on like feminist interpretation and like gender studies interpretation, and that if you look at what the women in the book experience and how most of them are just silent or dead, or the ones who are kind of like virtuous and what they're meant to be end up dead, and how Victor, like, and this is just strictly on like stereotypes, but gender speaking, like Victor is very feminized, just going on stereotypes of the time because he's so weak. He just faints at the sight of this creature. He doesn't want to deal with it, and he's passive, and he just goes through these moody phases, like he's stereotypically feminine. And so that's just an interesting kind of way to look at it too, is that like he's being feminized in this way by stereotype, but you know, what do you get out of that? Is just that it's awful.
Yeah.
So that stereotype.
I mean, I think we should talk about the kind of feminist threads in this book, themes and stuff, because there are a lot. If you think about, I mean, if you think about like the women characters and kind of how like without them, things just don't. Things are kind of, you know, like Victor lost his mom, you know, like right before he went off to college, sort of the first. And then you have Elizabeth, and who kind of grounds him, and who's like, you know, and then you have Justine, who's kind of, he's taking one for the team, for better or for worse. Like, you know, like And the men are just kind of screw ups here. Like, it's just interesting, and just obviously Mary Shelley's background and her mom, who's a huge like feminist writer. What was her name? Mary Wollstonecraft.
Oh, I didn't know her mom was a writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty famous. But so like Bethany, when you in schooly stuff, when y'all talk about feminist stuff, like what comes up the most?
Just me personally, the women and what happens to all the women. Every woman except for Sapphy dies violently or somehow. Even Victor's mother dies because she just can't wait to get into Elizabeth's room when Elizabeth's sick, knowing that, oh, you're pretty weak. You don't need to go hang out in there. You just got well yourself. No, I have to be a selfless mother and take care of my child. But it cost her life, and it cost her children their mother. And Justine, like you said, takes one for the team because Victor won't do anything. And Elizabeth is so super virtuous and selfless that she just doesn't ask questions. I'm going to go along with it. Yes, I trust you. So Sappy is the only one who comes out of it kind of okay. And, I think that's just because she decided to do her own thing.
Yeah. And I think it's, as a reader, then having that sort of dramatic irony of like when you hear Elizabeth say things like, "I'm just so glad you were here." When she takes him to the prison to see Justine, and she's like, "I'm just so glad you were here," and Victor's like, "I don't know." It's just like that dramatic irony of like her kind of trusting him, or her like you feel the shame, you feel his shame, and you're like, "Why aren't you doing anything, you stupid POS?"
He's just a bag of crap.
He's a bag of crap. I'll put it back on the screen. Kira said, "I can't help but see a man could create life, but has no idea what to do then." Completely true for the time period.
Yeah, and that's one of the kind of gender studies interpretations, is that he's trying to take over literally everything, including birth, which is at the time only women can do. And so this is what happens when patriarchal values try to take over the world. That's kind of the feminist interpretation.
And if Victor did have some of those, I guess, stereotypically trope, being nurturing and like Christy was saying about with his creation, then we wouldn't have had all those problems. Like, just be a human being, Victor. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we haven't talked about yet are the differences between the versions.
The importance of being titles.
Nice. So I think the most obvious difference was Elizabeth's relationship to Victor.
Elizabeth was straight up his cousin in the 1818 version.
And in the 1831 version, she was an orphan, basically.
Yeah,
she was like a foster kid in a family that weren't very well off, that Victor's and his mom, I guess, were visiting. And Victor's mom fell in love with her and adopted her, basically.
Yeah, that's a little less cringy than your cousin.
Yeah, in this version, it's his dad's sister who marries an Italian guy. They have a kid that's Elizabeth, and then she dies, and the Italian guy is like, "I can't do this. I'm going to send Elizabeth back to you if that's okay, Mr. Frankenstein." He's like, "Sure, we'll do it, and I'll hook her up with my son." And
sweet.
Yeah.
I thought that the difference was pretty interesting, especially because in the 1831 version, it's actually a pretty long explanation that Adam didn't get.
We didn't get any of that.
But I looked a lot for differences between the versions, and it was kind of hard to find anything else. Like, I read that Mary Shelley said in the introduction of the 1831 version that the only differences are like word, like
volume 1.
grammar and stuff, like, but which is just not true. And then I found like a paper or an article that talked about it, and it was saying that, see, perhaps the most significant change is the shift in emphasis from Victor's mistake as creating life and then choosing to abandon it to the act of creating life itself. But like, I don't know. I'm really, I'd love to see like it side by side and see the exact differences, because I do wonder like how different the books we read were.
What she says in her introduction to 1831 is, the alterations are principally those of style. I have changed no portion of the story nor introduced any new ideas or circumstances. I have mended the language where it was so bald as to interfere with the interest of the narrative. And these changes occur almost exclusively in the beginning of the first volume. Throughout, they are entirely confined to such parts as are mere adjuncts to the story, leaving the core and substance of it untouched. Did she lie? Bethany, what do you know of the differences?
So I've not read them both, but just from what I've gathered is that she lied a little bit.
Yeah.
But like the biggest difference, at least in like academic wise, is that later editions added in a lot more references to like God, Christianity, and it becomes religious. And that the reason that I don't really like that for this particular book is just that it doesn't really jibe with the godlessness of that original context and the despair. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And the thing about Elizabeth, the difference being that she's an orphan and she's not actually family, to me kind of detracts from the fact that, like, even though it's weird and cringy now that cousins married, like, it wasn't back then. It was a thing. And it just made her a more complex character. Like, she had a bigger number of roles. Like, she has so many different roles in this household, yet she handles it all so gracefully. And isn't she the perfect woman? So I don't know. And some of that kind of has to do with like critics, contemporary critics, like already being angry at some of the romantic writers for being atheists and how dare you. And so it's just, to me, the 1818 is the one. You write something at 18, you're going to write something very different in your 30s.
Oh, yeah. Well, she was a totally different person at that point, because her husband had died and she had lost 2 children by the time the second one was published.
Yeah. And
wow.
I wanted to read the 1818 because I wanted to read kind of the uninfluenced Frankenstein. Like, I wanted to see like kind of what her original ideas were going into it.
It was really hard to figure out what version you're reading before you read it. Like, for me at least, because I wanted to listen to the 1818 version, but they don't tell you what version it is. So I just picked one that had a good narrator that someone recommended in Discord, and it was the 1831 version, which I'm glad I read, but like I didn't go into it intending that. But like, I don't know how you're supposed to find out without reading them.
Yeah, the only reason I read this, I was going to read the ebook, but I was like, I'm going to get this one because I know.
Yeah.
And there's lots of prints of this too that aren't correct too. Like, yeah, there you go.
Well,
so like,
even in Discord, someone says they read a version that said it was the 1818 version, but Elizabeth was adopted. Like, she wasn't actually. So, and I think the explanation there is probably because it's, oh gosh, what's it called? Where anybody can like publish it and use it. And so free
Project Gutenberg, open source kind of.
Exactly. So I think there's just the market's flooded with versions, and I think it's getting a little muddy.
So one of the things on the back of this book, Penguin Classics has published the original 1818 text, which preserves the hard-hitting and politically charged aspects of Shelley's original writing with its strong female voice and unflinching wit, emphasizing Shelley's relationship with her mother, trailblazing feminist Mary Wollstonecraft. This text demonstrates her commitment to carrying forward her mother's ideals and places her in the context of a feminist legacy rather than the sole female in a company of male poets. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
let's deconstruct that academically and teach me something, Bethany. Like let's, because I don't have the other I don't have the context of like the changes, and I don't have I've never read Mary Wollstonecraft, but the hard hitting and politically charged, like the politically charged thing interests me. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I would just go with like the fact that I forget what it was. Like in the first one of the early prefaces, there's kind of a defense against like accusations of this being atheist. But it's just the whole context is just this godless world and this guy trying to kind of take over what you traditionally think God does. He creates. And so there was that. But then to get into feminism, like it's kind of strange when you've got all these main characters are guys, like they're all these men, but like they're awful, most of them.
They're all kind of impotent.
Yeah, and Victor being the worst. Like, I'll die on this hill. He's just the worst.
Victor sucks. I woke Christy up in the middle of the night to tell her like Victor sucks.
He did, and he almost got murdered for it because that was weird.
I was like, hey, Christy, Victor Frankenstein sucks.
I was like, you're right, but go to sleep.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the politically charged I mean, there is, I would say, a note of sort of atheism in here, seeing as how Victor is playing God. He is sort of subverting God. I don't know if it's an atheist note either, really, because like he subverts God to disastrous conclusion. Like he and there is a lot of reference even in this to Paradise Lost.
Yeah.
Which is very much a story about that whole thing.
The whole thing about Paradise Lost is that like it's biblical in subject matter, but it's another piece of literature. It's mythologizing, and the subtitle to Frankenstein is the modern Prometheus. So like it's got this pagan connotation, and the creature is gonna burn himself at the end, and that's very pagan. So there's like all this sort of religious stuff in there.
Yeah, I mean that the ultimate sacrifice, and the creature at the end being like, "I did all these things, but I don't feel so good about it now."
I guess for the time, that's probably really charged, right? It doesn't feel like it maybe in today's modern world, but some of those tones coming across when you had more conservative views or religious tight-knit communities, and it's like, what is this novel?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wish I could go back and like experience the time period so that I can read this as like kind of the radical piece of work that it is. Because now reading it when I've seen some crazy stuff. So like like this being in the time period, being in the like, because when this came out, she published it anonymously, and the reviews were kind of mixed, and people were speculating. They were like, I think this might be William what's his face's Gibson, whoever she dedicated this to, her dad. This is this guy's daughter that wrote this, and they're like, oh no, she's like, I think I read in the introduction that people like then like, I can't believe this came out of anybody, much less a woman, and like this woman must be like a terrible person. And then they met her, and she was like the picture of like femininity and like charming and whatever. And they were like, what? Huh?
How dare you have thoughts in your head?
Yeah, how dare you? Not just thoughts, but like grotesque thoughts. But that's what I wish I had more of a historical context on. Is like, how crazy was this? And it must have been pretty crazy because it's stuck around. Either that or like it kind of faded into obscurity. And Boris Karloff, and there was that whole movie where Boris Karloff played the creature, and then everyone was like, "Ooh, this is kind of cool. Is this based on a book?" What's Benny up to? Oh, just laying around.
Just talking. Hi, Benny.
He has destroyed his.
Yeah, those
little
arches
thing.
were over him, and he has.
There he goes.
He's about to move.
He's about to.
We're gonna move him. Oh
Um,
dear.
I can't believe Benny is 6 months old. Can we
He's
just
old,
talk
man.
about how crazy that is?
He's so old, man. Gosh, look at him.
Adam, I had to go buy my son's jeans from the men's section yesterday.
What is happening to people? How dare they grow and learn? When Benny was born, I was like Victor. I was just like, ah, and then I ran away and got sick for months.
Good thing you have Christy.
Yeah. But he was made in a laboratory with lightning, so we were like, assembled him and all that stuff. So it's true to life. It's so true. Okay. More Frankenstein.
I know we kind of talked about how this reminded a lot of people of Interview with the Vampire. When I first started reading this, I thought it reminded me of like a mix between Interview with the Vampire and Pride and Prejudice. And let's see, who was it? Jennifer Colton said on Facebook or Discord, I can't remember, that they kept comparing the writing style to Pride and Prejudice, which was published in 1813.
Oh, so they're contemporaries.
But like the way that people talk really reminded me of Pride and Prejudice a lot.
Yeah.
Which I enjoyed. So I thought that was cool.
Northanger Abbey is published, I think, the same year. It was written earlier, but it was published same year as Frankenstein.
It'd be crazy. It's like, all right, and here's our book of the year, y'all. Thanks for joining our stream. I'm with you, Adam. Like, it would have been really interesting to be in the moment experiencing it as this radical new. And who wrote it? Like, we don't know. It was, penned. We don't know who penned it, and then to find that out, like in a modern, if you took that in a modern world where you had the communication means that we have today, and what I don't know, it'd be really neat to experience that. I don't want to go back to 1818, though, y'all.
I don't want to.
I'm good. I'm good.
So Bethany, you say that you keep discovering new things every time you read it. What are some of the things? What are some things you learn on the rereads?
Oh gosh, this most recent time was mostly just kind of the gender studies angle. I was like, why are all these women dying? But then, some of the earlier implications with stuff that we even touched on, like class, that he's just a spoiled rich kid, and that we can talk about education, like what the social implications would be for the creature as like needing education. What did he learn from the de Lacys? Why was it good for him or bad for him? Like, what kind of authors was he reading? So there's so much gender, class, education, like everything. You can find anything in Frankenstein.
What an endorsement.
I would definitely reread Frankenstein. Like, I didn't love it, but I did enjoy like reading this classic, and like, I don't know, there's some things I really did like about it, but I think reading it a second time would be enlightening.
Yeah, and you can place like any kind of capital O other in the place of the creature and just analyze it.
Yeah,
it's so awesome.
It does kind of transcend and it applies to a lot of different social justice issues, social issues, that sort of stuff. And in that way, it is kind of universal, evergreen, lessons to be learned all over the place. Just the lesson of like just his prejudice towards the monster based on how he looks. And it's like, man, he just like gave him a shot and like just forgot about all that and like treated him like a human being, people wouldn't still be alive.
Yeah, and the whole thing about like he doesn't even have a name. Like one of the girls in class last year was just so hurt by the fact that he doesn't have a name that she just started calling him Francis.
Oh.
So he's just Francis.
Francis.
It's a good name.
Yeah. Then they would say, "Oh, vile Francis," because he calls him. I mean, he's just straight up like as soon as the monster shows up, he's like demon, and then like is done.
I know.
I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
go ahead.
Just he sees the creature, and what does he do? He like passes out or something, and he just hopes that it has run away into the woods and dies. Like that's what you do with a mouse. Like what? Come on, dude.
Yeah.
Francis Frankenstein.
I think one of the funnest things for me is after Adam finished the book, he started sending me texts as if they were written by Mary Shelley.
Oh my God.
And
That's awesome.
it was fantastic. I mean, I only got like 2 of them, but I'm campaigning to get more.
It just fades away though. Like I had just finished reading it, so I was like, my thought process, my inner monologue was in the voice of Mary Shelley, but now it's just me.
Oh, well, reread it.
Okay. But like, so Christy, you have read Dracula, right?
Yeah.
Have you read Dracula, Bethany?
Yes, I'm writing my thesis on it.
Oh wow.
How does this compare to that? Because like Dracula is also kind of a big origin story for universal type monsters. And Christy, you hated Dracula, right?
I did not enjoy reading Dracula, but I appreciated reading Dracula because it's just amazing. It's just a lot like Frankenstein in that like so much stuff has come from it. And like it is just something everybody knows. And you can see iterations of Dracula everywhere you look, especially like around Halloween. It's amazing. I just thought that was super cool. And there were some things I enjoyed about it, but for the most part, I didn't love it.
Yeah, and I didn't super enjoy it either until like I started writing a paper on it, paper writer. But like I found, if you read Jane Eyre recently, or if you've ever read Jane Eyre, Bertha Mason, totally a vampire, like figuratively, but she's totally a vampire. And so that's my paper, because Dracula doesn't get a lot of feminist interpretation, but Mina is very, very much like Jane Eyre, and Jane Eyre gets all the feminist interpretation. And so that's where I'm going with it. I'm not super into vampires, but I just thought that was cool.
I think I've read Bram Stoker's Dracula. I do like Dracula better than Frankenstein.
Was that later?
I think there's a better, well-rounded, thought-out story there, personally, with more dynamic characters and more dynamic women.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's really fascinating, though, Bethany.
I love it.
When was Dracula written?
1895.
That was way later than Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Shoot. Mary Shelley, you are a trailblazer.
Yeah.
With the monster genre, science fiction this is considered the first science fiction novel, right?
A lot of people say that, and I don't really have a problem with it. It's just, it fits so many genres.
Yeah.
It's horror, it's science fiction.
But yeah, I've also seen her. I've seen people say she's the mother of horror too, but I don't know.
Fascinating. It's birthing all sorts of genres here in the written
this
form.
would have been really. I could see it had been really scary back then, that this monster ripping people apart, and you don't know where it's going to be, and to be such a lumbering giant of a creature, it sure does slink around and go unnoticed pretty well, right?
Yeah.
Like to travel the continent and incognito. How?
And the patience, right? Like he had a lot of patience, because there was a moment like Victor was like, oh yeah, I have to go start on this new creation, and then he and Henry just kind of mess around in Scotland for a minute, and they're just, the creature's just like, I was thinking he's going to get real impatient because Victor said he was going to do this, and now he's just kind of taking another vacation. And then finally he's like, all right, Henry, I'm going to go up here for a minute. I'll catch you later. And he's like, okay. Then we didn't talk about the moment where he got arrested, where like Henry died, and like
and then he
Victor
like
just kind of washes up on the shores of Ireland.
because he was getting rid of the parts
was
for
getting-
the wife.
He was getting rid of his stuff, and then the wind blew, and he fell asleep.
Yeah,
And,
and he washed up like right down. I guess
Crap bag.
but like some foresight on the monster's part, because he killed Henry and like left him in the right spot so that they would think that Victor did it. I was not expecting him to be so intelligent,
Cunning,
yeah, so cunning, and like
What was it? Oh, the locket? It was locket or the picture of
that
putting
William had.
that William had pegging that on Justine. It's like what?
Yeah, I forgot about those things.
yeah, he was, because everything we know of Frankenstein is like Herman Munster. Of the monster, Frankenstein's monsters, it's Herman Munster. It's like it's that guy. That's not that guy. It's this guy, apparently.
It is.
Well, okay, cool. That brings us to the hour. We've done it.
Wow,
Oh no, I'm out
yeah.
of focus.
You did that.
I did that by holding up the book. We're back. That brings us to the hour. So we can wrap up. Are you going to read the next one in the series?
Oh, definitely.
Nice.
Frankenstein 2.
Well, we got just a couple of announcements to do. First of all, if you haven't signed up yet, Secret Santa is live. We're doing Secret Santa again on Elster. Look, there it is.
There's a link in the Facebook page.
There's a link on the Facebook group. We can post it again on the Discord and the Facebook. It's on the Discord as well.
Do we have 61 people already? Is that what that says?
Yeah, we got 61 people on the gift exchange so far. If you haven't signed up for it and you want to participate in it, it's a fun time. Benny's ready. Aren't you ready? Don't hit yourself.
He just hit himself.
Stop hitting yourself. Quit hitting yourself. That's a game we'll play later. But yeah, Secret Santa, the deadline is December 1st. We just want to
Which is Friday.
Yeah, that's Friday.
Wait, so Friday they can sign up, or they have to do it by Friday? So do it by Thursday, just in case.
I want to say you can still sign up on Friday, and
Probably.
I can change it to do so. But the deadline is Friday. Sign up if you don't have to. It's not mandatory, but it's a good time. Deadline is Friday, just so we give people enough time to buy their gifts and have them sent and whatever. Just go do it now. Also, we're calling the poll.
Oh, it's already called.
It's already been called. The winner for the graphic novel for December is Chew, Volume 1. Much to Talia's delight.
Talia was not happy with the Lit fam on this one. She's not a cannibal, anything cannibalistic or zombie or that does not gel with her. She's a little miffed at our Lit
Benny
fam.
just
but that's
talking to
okay.
the microphone.
Yeah, sorry, he's just chatting.
But we will be reading Chew. He's not a cannibal.
Yeah, but
Chew in December. I'm looking forward to it. I hear good things about it. Jeff says good things about it, and Jeff is our go-to graphic novel guy.
he is.
Adrian is already digging up the issues.
Nice.
So that will be. We will still have 2 live streams in December. What are those?
So on Wednesday, December 13th, we're going to have the live discussion for Chew.
First,
Yeah. And then the next Wednesday,
the 20th.
we're going to have our Literally Wasted holiday hangout, and you don't have to have read anything to come to that. We're just going to have some fun.
Some merry cheer,
Yeah.
some merriment,
We'll be wearing our Christmas sweaters or Christmas pajamas or something Christmassy.
something Christmas.
Yeah.
Fun and games.
Benny's first Christmas. We're very excited.
Aw,
He's falling asleep.
yay.
I think he's falling asleep.
Oh, don't fall asleep.
He's falling.
Don't,
Look at this.
don't go to sleep.
He's out.
Stop. No. I'm going to wake him up.
It's bedtime. It's not bedtime. We got to eat.
You have to eat.
Hey! But thank you so much, Bethany, for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Bethany.
Your
Yeah,
insight.
thank you so much.
Thanks for
we
having me. This was so fun.
really enjoyed having you on here, and all of your insight on Frankenstein. It was just awesome.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much. And
Thank you guys.
for everybody, thank you for hanging out with us tonight. And we'll see you very soon to discuss Chew in December. So bye.
Everybody.
Bye. Oh, did
Have
you
a-
see his little thumb come in?
Oh.